All right, here we go. Make host. You are now the host, JP. Take it away. But you need to come off mute first. There you go.
Oh, good. As I had said, I had been trying to get into the meeting for about 10 minutes, so it was a little frustrating.
JP, do you not?
The problem was.
JP, do you not have the login credentials for this?
I do not have the log. You haven't sent them.
I didn't know you didn't
think.
have them, so I will send them to you.
Yeah, if you do that, then I'll be happy to
Okay.
host the meeting, get it started, and do the agendas or whatever else you need. So that's good. Don't see anyone from the public here. Today is October 15th, and this is the senior tax work-off committee meeting. So that being no members of the public, right on to the business. We have minutes that were kindly done by Joe. I see Peg. Raise her hand.
We need to assign somebody to do the minutes today before
Okay.
we get too much farther.
I was just going to see if we could accept them, but fine. We are looking for volunteers. All right, Brendan. Thanks so much.
I mean, you're the best.
You're it today.
Yep.
I think you'll get through it and do just fine. Thank you. So the minutes were completed by Joe. They were sent out. I hope everyone's had a chance to look at them, and we will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting for September 23rd.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent, guy.
Here, everybody say aye. We should probably take
Aye.
a roll call. Brendan, I apologize. We should do everything by roll call according to Hoyle. So let's do that. Brendan?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Jay?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Peg?
Aye.
And JPI. So that's done. Good. We had a little bit of work to do. And I wonder if there are any particular reports. Anybody want to start first from the exercise that we had for the week? If anyone's done anything, Peg.
So I actually don't remember what my tasks were, but I did tasks anyway, whether they were mine or not. I started.
Well, you were going to talk with the mayor, I thought, and
Yep,
with the
yep.
departments. That was the one I remembered very clearly.
Yeah. So first, what I was going to say is I started a draft of the proposal that we will ultimately be giving to her. And I completely admit that I plagiarized one of the ones that we got from one of the other communities, which was kind of awesome. And I can't remember which community, but it was great. So I started that. There are some things in it that we're going to have to make decisions about, like the age of the people we want the threshold, the dollar amount that we want to have as our cap. All of those particulars we need to finally kind of land on and put a line in the sand. As far as talking to the department heads, apparently it is like getting an audience with the Pope to meet with all of the department heads. I've been working on it for 2 weeks, and apparently there are some issues that need to be worked out with schedules. So I am hoping that next week,
Wow.
and so what it's going to be essentially is, because that's what I talked to the mayor first, and she said, set up a schedule with the department heads, meet with them, give them kind of a lay of the land. And then she said she wants a deep dive conversation with her, Jen, and Val, maybe? I'm not sure. But that would be with our presentation, and we're not ready to give her the presentation yet. So
Right.
I'm hoping that next week I will meet with all the department heads and I can get their feedback. I've written kind of an email to them that I asked Zoe to send to them, but there's some concerns about timing. I don't even want to know. Today's not the day to ask me. So I will get that all squared away and hopefully get that meeting set next week. I blame Jen.
Okay, I'll take the blame.
That's
Actually-
right. Wait a minute. You weren't here for the last meeting, right?
No, that's why I was gonna.
Yeah, you get the blame for that.
Close downhill,
Blame
Jen.
me, that's fine, I wasn't here. Well, no, but I did want to update you that I know I had said the meeting before last that I was going to look to see if there was the possibility of any like grants in starting up a program that might be able to cover this for the first year or something like that. And unfortunately, because it's defraying taxes, there isn't.
You haven't found
You
it
know what I
yet.
mean? Yeah. But I mean, can't hurt to look, right? You know? And so I did speak with Westfield and Southwick. My three were Westfield, Southwick, and Springfield. Now, Springfield on their website has something called a Senior Community Service Employment Program, which is not a tax work-off program. I didn't get into the specifics of what it is because it was something totally different. So that said, I got information from Southwick and Westfield. Westfield we really already had, and based on the fact that I used to work there, you know, I know a lot about the program.
Right.
This is just my opinion, and I know we've kind of went back and forth about this, but I think that as a pilot, we should stay under $600 per person as a benefit. And I say that only because it might be better received by some of the city administration that needs to do the work behind it, not myself. You know, it just, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, if we can show like, oh my gosh, look at how much of a need there is. We got all these applications. We couldn't even, let all these people in. If we find that it's a huge, there's a huge interest in it, then maybe we reassess the value, based on how many people we get. Like Southwick does a, they'll take as many applications as possible, like they have the criteria like everyone does, but they then do a lottery and they have 10 spots. And you only get put into the lottery if you have notable skills, that would help in the areas that Southwick's looking to fill. And like I said, then it's just a lottery draw. So, but they do 1,500. I guess my hesitation on doing what's going to require W-2s or not W-2s, I'm sorry, 1099s is just, I'd hate for there to not be as much interest as we're anticipating and then have to kind of like launch this program for a limited few and have it fizzle. I mean, I don't know. It's almost like if we can just call this the pilot, like we've been talking about, and if it's a pilot, we can change it after. That's not a big deal. But then at least we can work out the bugs. We can learn the setup. Determine how much it's going to change if we increase that amount, and then also determine when Peg gets feedback from the department heads, there may be huge interest, there may be little interest, but that may change one way or the other once the program gets rolling. So that's just my little spiel, just to kick things off, but I'm only one person.
Only one person. Let's see. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I think everyone here will be in agreement that if we start small, we're better off. I think that we've kind of identified that. We threw out figures of $10,000 for the program in the first year, somewhere between 5 and 10, and I think we're still all along that track. I don't see any heads nodding here or anyone shaking their head no. We have a different idea. Nod your heads. Can you hear me? Peg.
So because I have to live my life contrary, I don't disagree, Jen, but here's the thought I had. I agree we need to run a pilot. We absolutely need to keep it narrow. But my concern with making it $600 is that people might not fill out all the application and do all the things for just $600. So it may not gauge the interest based on that. But I understand that it adds a layer of complexity to add the 1099s. I don't understand what that workload would look like and how much effort it would be. And I'm perfectly fine with starting with $600. I just want to throw out the fact that, you know, I don't know that I would necessarily apply and work, you know, for 600. I mean, maybe I would, I don't know.
Yeah.
But just my thinking, I'm only one vote.
One of the things that I just wanted to bring up, and I don't know if this is helpful at all, but when I spoke to Holyoke, and this is coming from the COA director, so I'm not sure, you know, what it means at large for the rest of the municipality, but she had sent out, like she had told me to be cautious about setting it low because she thought that you would never be able to then eventually go after more money, that it would have just been capped at that amount and it would be really hard to increase beyond the tax credit that was already established. But take that for what it's worth. That's coming from just the COA director, so I'm not, you know, sure, like I said, what that means for the rest of the city and how they view it.
And the other concern might be the folks that do participate that first round get this benefit and it's great, no problem. And then we up it. And then all of a sudden at the end of the year, they're getting a 1099. Whoa, this didn't happen the first time. Yeah. So
I think, yeah, absolutely, Jay. We need to be very clear with whomever joins the program what the tax implications are regarding however much money we have, whether it be starting at below the 600 or above the 600. And I did want to add some information that I was able to ascertain from a CPA who said, hey, if someone works, they either get a W-2 and from $1, or they're supposed to report those funds to the revenuer. And so if you're working, whether you get a 1099 or not, technically, the accountant said everyone's supposed to report every dime that they earn. So that being said, but the city, however, in terms of the mechanism for generating the 1099s, isn't obligated to do a 1099 if the figure is below the $600. So in terms of our side, I think we need to tell everybody that, you know, this is income, but we're not going to 1099 you if it is below the $600. And I think we have done the service for the client and for the city, both. Joe, I see your hand raised.
Just a clarifying question. I guess in sending 1099s, you've decided, or by implication, the participants will be considered independent contractors.
That becomes the other question, and that may be another.
I think they're related very much.
Oh, no, there becomes another question to answer whether the work being performed qualifies for a 1099 independent contractor or as an employee,
W-2.
which would require a W-2. So it would depend, I think, on the function to be performed and the interpretation of the evaluator. So there are plenty of rules for that. And I wish that the federal government would say, hey, you know, if you create the senior tax work-off program and the money is less than $1,500, please don't send us, don't report that income, because the state, your state isn't requiring you to report that income. You don't have to report it to the feds. And I think the federal government would be serving the public far better, and it would all be far less complicated and less expensive, and Jen wouldn't have to worry about the administration having to do the paperwork to get these folks aboard. Anyway, that being said, good point, Joe. And I don't think we have an answer as to that. That becomes another question to review.
I'm pretty sure that the way that it's written in the Mass General Law is that they break it out pretty clearly that the volunteers aren't employees. They're volunteers, and the tax credit is then going to be reported on the 1099. That's how I read it. That's how I read, actually, not in the statute, the advisory from the IRS.
From the IRS or the DOR?
IRS.
This was a federal
Yes. Yeah.
advisory.
Yep.
What was the source of that, Jay? Do you have the source available?
I sure do.
Like the publication number?
Yeah. Give me a couple of minutes.
Yeah,
Sure.
that would probably be worth taking a closer look at.
Yeah.
Anyone else on the subject so far, or with regard to any work that was done during the weeks? I know Joe and Brendan had done their work. I think Peg has done hers with regard to the communities, and so did I. That, I think, leaves us where we start to pull it, as Peg had mentioned earlier, where we pull everything together. Oh, wait a minute. I have my report. That's right. Sorry. I was going to check out with a few folks regarding the town of Chelmsford because there was a question. Brendan, we just all our chins dropped to the floor when you said Chelmsford had $150,000 worth of senior tax work-off in the community. And in fact, I talked to the treasurer in the interim, the treasurer of Chelmsford, who was very forthcoming, very helpful, and just said that the community really felt that they had a great number of seniors and a great desire to support those seniors, and found that the seniors that they had were folks who tended to be on fixed incomes, whose incomes were declining. The expenses were rising as the income remained the same. They were getting squeezed, and the community just made a commitment and is doing it far in excess of any other program. So they have, as you had noted, 1,000, let's see, what was it? It was 150 participants earning up to $1,000 each. 150 participants in the program earning up to 150,000. And one of the questions I asked was, well, gosh, did you use any CPA funds in the process? And he said, no, they do not use CPA funds to fund that level of commitment. That it's funded, Jen, you may be able to help me here. I'll try to get it right. Funded through the tax overlay. Funded through the tax overlay, and which is driven, I think, off of the is it the LA?
It's encumbered in the tax recap.
Right, in the tax recap. So that figure is derived, and maybe you and I can talk sometime during the week about it, and I certainly would like to be better informed as to how that gets generated, how it's calculated, and what some of the numbers are. So that left us with the CPA, and as I had mentioned at the last meeting, I didn't think that the CPA was going to be a possible source to use. I had never heard of anything being done in any community in Massachusetts regarding using the CPA to fund senior tax work-off. So I did a deep dive into the legislation, and I'll be sending you copies of what I discovered. And I just want to summarize all of that as saying I think there's a possibility of combining the two pieces of legislation. Although it's going to be something where each segment, each law has its own constituency, its own group of folks who support it, who are knowledgeable about it. So the CPA people do the CPA thing, and the senior tax work-off people do the senior tax work-off thing. So nobody's, I think, has really tried to put this together. And I think the idea that was brought up at the last meeting is definitely worth pursuing. As long as we're very clear and sure that the CPA will augment and not supplant any existing efforts by the various departments. That is to say, for example, Jen, we couldn't use CPA funds to fund an assistant treasurer that you already have, right? Someone working in the department. The city couldn't say, oh, geez, we're gonna find a CPA individual and use those funds to hire an assistant treasurer because we just had an opening. And although it was in the budget, now we're going to use CPA isn't for that. It's for augmenting existing services, not supplanting any resources. So that's one of the key points in using CPA funds. There are other key points, and I'll just mention one of them briefly, and that is the commissioner of the Department of Revenue is empowered to make regulations regarding the CPA, and that commissioner has said that you can't use the money for salaries. Guess what? The legislation for our senior tax work-off program says in no instance shall the amount by which a person's property tax liability is reduced in exchange for the provision of services be considered income or wages. So I think that presents an interesting scenario whereby wages can't be used by CPA for the various departments, but on the other hand, the legislature and the governor have said, hey, this isn't wages. And I think that presents a possibility for us to pursue. So I will continue to be pursuing that. I'll share with you my research on that topic. I've also shared it with the community preservation, or talked to the Community Preservation Coalition in Boston, and talked to Jeff Bagg here in Easthampton, the city planner, and Jamie Webb. I've had communications with her regarding this. There are some other questions to work out. So that's my report for the work. In terms of where we go from here, I think I should have a conversation a bit with the mayor about the possibility of using CPA funds. I'll be doing that. I think we should be focused on presenting maybe a draft outline. I've been giving that some thought. Has anyone else thought about an outline of the report? There's various segments, and how that should be broken up. I'm looking at Peg and Joe. I see Peg's not.
I already started to do that, JP. I was plagiarizing one of the ones that we got from one of the community. I don't know, Joe, it might have been one you said. Jay, it might have been yours, actually. But there was one out there that was really very clear. It talked about who's eligible, how much, age, dates, types of jobs, all of that stuff was contained in this document. So I started doing it. But what I mentioned earlier at the top of this meeting is we have to fill in what the dollar amount's going to be, the maximum dollar amount, the age that we're going to start at, whether it's 60, 62, whatever it is, and the timing, like what months will it run. All of those particulars, I think we need to kind of nail down so that we can write the first draft of the proposal, which really is plagiarizing what's already out there. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. Yeah.
Great. I love it when we get to do that. Joe.
You're muted.
You're muted. Excellent.
If you could help me out here, what sort of document you guys have been referring to, what's the nature of the document and who's it going to and what's it going to contain?
The charge from the city council was for us to make a report to the city council about our study. So it really could be anything that we put in there regarding the senior tax work-off program, whether it doesn't work for our community, whether we think it will work for our community. Certainly the work that we've done to examine other programs, I think would be part, I'm sure Peg has that in some fashion in an outline.
And ultimately it's going to the mayor primarily?
Well, after the city council gets it, the hope is that we would bring it to the mayor on a formal basis and say, hey, the city council either endorses or doesn't endorse this. So it'll either probably be tabled or brought forth. Now, it may be prudent to politically share some of this with the mayor prior to be sure we have her agreement. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Madam President.
Oh, that's me. She already knows about it. I have gotten favorable responses from her on this. I get the impression that, pending her department heads, if they throw up all over it, that may sway her. But, the feedback I'm getting when I have brief conversations with her is positive. I think there's an appetite to do this. And I think what it will take is a very clear document of the dollars, of the ages, of the feedback from the department heads. What did they say? What are their concerns? How are we going to react to their concerns? All of that, so that when she has questions, we've already figured out the answers. And Jen, maybe you're closer to this than I, but the feeling I get is that if my department heads are good with this, I'm good with this. I mean, that's, she hasn't really given me any indication that, we're not going to look at this or anything. She's like, bring it.
And that, I would have to agree with you on that. And she tends to be like that about a lot of things. Like if we, if as department heads, we feel a need for it and that it would be something that's beneficial, not only to the residents that we'd be helping out, but to, the efficiency of the city, then she would, I do think she would be in agreement with it. I guess the real question will be when you get in touch with, department heads besides myself and Brendan, what will the interest be? You're gonna probably be met with some, I'm so busy, I don't have time to show anybody how to do anything, so I don't want anybody else in my office. And I can guarantee you will get some pushback on the administrative side of things. But that said, that's, I don't know if that's going to be 50% of the department heads or 5% or 75%. Yeah. So
I expect that there will, I could probably name them now, the ones who will be like, get away from me. I've got so much on my plate. I can't do it. But, a lot of the pilot is going to hinge on the COA, and we've got Brendan. So I feel like we can, at a very minimum, get a pilot going for a year and use the success of that to drive some more success.
Sure. So in addition to the report that's going to go to the mayor or to the city council first and then the mayor, you'd need basically a program, a pilot test, all the documents related to running a pilot test, the memos to the participants and the memos to different people. So on one hand, we're looking for a report, one, and then two would be having a set of documents which would constitute, if we're going to run this as a pilot, these are the things.
What an application would look like.
That's
what
correct.
A job would look like,
That's correct. Yep.
And just out of curiosity, I don't know what people feel about this, but how long do you let that pilot period run for? Because I'd be concerned, cutting it off before like 2 or 3 years or something like that, because how are you supposed to grow? First of all, we got to make sure that we adequately put out enough information about this to the community so that they're well aware and that they're informed. And it needs time to breathe. So I don't know what a good amount of time would be, but I would just be a little concerned about, putting it up on the chopping block after the first year.
Oh, like a thumbs down or a thumbs up, like give ourselves 3 years, commit to 3 years. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, enough time to see what kind of numbers we're pulling in. And then after a few years, if it's turning out that we're getting 3 or 4 people, then, maybe that'll be the time to say, all right, enough of the program. But I just don't want to cut it off too soon.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brendan. I think that we could definitely incorporate that. Of course, the funding would be done annually according to our budgetary process, but the concept would be, hey, this is a 3-year pilot.
Right.
I like that. Good point.
And I know that I was, when I was reading on Southwick's website, because I went and saw like what forms and information they put on their website, they said that because they're the one where they only do the 10 people out of a lottery. So if you do it this year, you're not eligible next year unless they don't get enough applications. Do you know what I mean? So that might be, being the pilot program, that might also be a good area to at least discuss, this way we can really gauge interest. Is it the same 10 people coming back every year? Or are there 40 people? And so we've got to rotate this and it might be to our benefit to up it, or, you know what I mean? So that I thought I kind of liked that. In Westfield, you can do it year after year after year. So I thought that was a good thing to have.
Because some of the towns that I spoke with, are out in, the Natick Framingham area, the same thing, they encourage, if they get enough people to apply, then they're willing to turn that group over every year. But what they found is that, one of the challenges for them has been marketing the program to potential participants. And the other concern is with the skills match, because, with a lottery, you're hoping that the people who get selected in the lottery have the skill set that's needed for the jobs too. So,
well, I think Jen had said earlier that there was some pre-selection.
Yes.
And I think that may be something we have to stress in our report, because if we drive with the jobs first and then select for the positions, then the skill sets will be clear.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, on the other hand, I suppose someone might argue and say, hey, geez, if you get a civil engineer that says, hey, I'd love to, do some work for the city, and hey, I don't care if I get minimum wage, that's fine. You might want to put them to work in the engineering department on some projects. So I think it's going to be flexible. But,
sorry, JP. Actually, I'm kind of, thinking I'm trumping my own ideas as I think. And because I'm thinking too, as much as it would be good to have people not eligible the following year so that we can kind of turn it over a lot, you might get pushback from some of the department heads on that for having to keep training people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a very important point. And in fact, the fella I spoke with, the treasurer over in Chelmsford, had said, geez, I got somebody and they were great for this position. Well, what did you use them for? I had them come in just as the taxes were due. Oh, okay. So every quarter you had somebody, come in, sit, be in the office, be at the front counter, take the checks, check the names, check the dates, check this, do it. I'll have the checklist. Put the money, put the check in the drawer with the bill, bang. Now the person, I heard that the phones ring off the hook. Is that true around when taxes are due? So the person who was trained and the staff person could be answering the phones all day, and somebody else could be at the counter doing the actual collection. So, and he said, boy, once we got them trained, it was great. And I hated to see them go after I think they lasted 3 or 4 years. So you're absolutely right. Having some longevity of ability to do the certain work is a consideration, especially when you find those people who are right for the job. My
Right.
gosh, you really don't want to let them go, and they will make your program. So
Right.
hard and fast rule. What do you think? Anybody else on that one? Whether we should be making recommendations on hard and fast rules regarding this, or kind of leave it open?
I guess the one thing about a pilot test is, you don't lock everything, set it in stone, so that if you find, because of the pilot test, that something needs to be changed, you can easily change it. And so I think you start off a pilot test with some rules in place, but they're not so rigid that, they stay in place no matter what.
I can see this being part of our report, so I think we should have good notes on this aspect. Brendan, I'm looking at you today. I want to see that in the notes, because I think we definitely should put that in the report.
Brendan, sounds like a good thing for the board to do, huh?
Yeah.
As far as having two department heads, I'm thrilled, and I think that's really enough to go with. I agree with Peg. I think we could do our pilot with the program with your two departments, but I hope we could find at least one other, and that I think should be our goal, to find another. If it doesn't show up, I think we can show them the way.
So Peg, would it be helpful for like the next meeting, pick one section of your draft or your proposal, or maybe a couple, I don't know, how lengthy it is or whatever, but we start picking out sections to then start voting on? Is that what would be the next?
I think we should start making decisions about that, and then building upon that. Yeah, making votes on age, on the dollar amount, on how many. Are we going to cap it at a certain number based on, I think we talked about $30,000 as maybe the cap impact. So what does that equal? And make all those decisions. I don't think the document's going to be pages and pages and pages long. I think it's going to be maybe 2 or 3 at most. And really, to Joe's point, the artifacts that will fall behind the thing are sample applications, sample job descriptions, things like that. And honestly, I think all the stuff that we all put out on the drive has all that. I'm just doing what's already there and just changing the logo and things like that. So if we can start doing that, I started it like 2 weeks ago, and here we are. So I will go back and try to get that finished and send it off to you. It's on the share drive.
So the list of questions are on the shared drive, or the documents on the shared drive with blanks?
The document that is on the share drive is the beginning of the proposal, and I'll tell you, the first line of the proposal, not even the proposal, it says the City of Easthampton, by vote of the City Council and approval of the mayor in pick the month of whatever, has accepted the senior tax work-off program as outlined in blah, blah, blah. Residents 60 years of age or older are eligible to work off up to $1,500 in property taxes. And then it goes into the hourly rate, the volunteer period, the income limitations, the ownership, the other limitations, the accounting. It goes through all of that. And that's what I envision us handing over to the mayor with appendices that are some of those artifacts, like applications, so that she knows that her staff doesn't need to do all that, that we will give the sample stuff and they just customize it. The least amount we can have her department heads have to do in this, the better. And I think even so, insofar as we should maybe speak to how application, I don't know, Brendan, maybe we create a process whereby the applications that come in don't take up a lot of your time. Maybe this committee helps preview them. I don't know. We can be open to anything, but just trying to think outside the box. But I will probably have that ready, barring any more catastrophes, in maybe the next week.
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously overseeing and interviewing applicants is a perfect, place for the COA to be involved. question is though, is that I'm going to have to be working with finance, I would imagine, right? Finance would give the ultimate approval after submitting documentation if we are doing an income eligibility piece to it.
Well, I think, I mean, the impression that I got from the other municipalities that I looked at was you're either eligible or you're not based on just a threshold. So they require a copy of the prior year's tax return. And like, for instance, you know, like Southwick, if it was a single filing, $48,000 was the cap. And if it were married, filing jointly, it was like $69,000 or something like that. So I think what we would do is, you know, as a committee, we would come up with those thresholds, and then it would just be, so it's not like we would have to be running like financial analysis on people. It would just be, okay, they make less than what we said they have to make, so they're eligible. These people make more, so unfortunately they're not. You know, I mean, so that piece of it, I think, would be more, you know, it's something we could just have a process as we receive applications. You know, it could be, you know, have a little checklist for each one. Do they meet the income requirement? Do they meet the age requirement? Do you know what I mean? Like those types of things. And then probably, you know, based on what jobs we're trying to fill for the department heads, you know, there could be like an additional checklist on available skills, you know, and then that would kind of help weed out the you know, the people with unique or special skills versus, you know, someone who could come in and file, which I'm sure there'll be plenty of department heads that would love to just have someone come in and file. So that's not, you know, to say that those won't be important, but I just think that it's kind of there's kind of going to have to be like a checklist, you know, when the applications come in, check the boxes. And then if it needs to be, you know, then Brendan, if it's, you know, if you have a pile for people who have clerical experience, you have a pile for people who worked in the engineering department, you know what I mean? And then those, you know, are the applications that you would discuss with those department heads.
Yeah, I was just wondering about like the official like stamp of approval. It wouldn't come from my office. Yeah, I don't know if that is appropriate. I mean, of course we would vet everybody who's coming in, and we'll try to, you know, comb through, you know, the applications to find the perfect fit for the jobs that are available. But I, you know, I guess I was just wondering that final approval, who is it coming from?
Maybe it goes through this committee.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
You know, I mean, maybe, I know originally this was like the work group to get it started.
Final approval of the candidates?
Yeah, the final, yeah, so, I mean, we could present, like, if the COA is doing a bunch of different interviews, and we go through and we say, hey, these are the 5 applicants, for example. And we've got all the documentation, you know, their tax forms and everything like that, and then we send it over to, I would imagine, we wouldn't be going through their finances to determine eligibility, would we? I don't know if that's something that the COA would do. I don't know.
It could.
It could. All right.
I mean, if you just have some income guidelines that people make no more than X or Y for a married couple, I mean, we could look at a tax return and just say yes or no. Do they meet the guidelines?
All right.
Yeah, and Brendan, I'm happy to, especially during like the pilot, I'm happy to, you know, we can maybe make it so that we meet up once every now and then and go through the applications as you're getting them. If you feel better, you know, having someone else taking a look at them or whatever, that's fine too.
Wouldn't HR also need to have a role in this?
I would think.
Oh yeah, so yeah, personnel would be in on interviews. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because there is still things people have to sign off on. You can't just walk into the building and start doing stuff without being cleared.
Right.
Well,
They'll all have to sign like
They would have to be
confidentiality agreements and stuff.
Right, they'd have to go through the entire process, all the forms. I don't know if you want to burden HR with anything more than that segment of the role, the open meeting law, all of the conflict of interest, all those things that they normally do, they're geared up to do. Here we are to ask them to do any financial review. Should we have financial income limits? I would say keep them away from that, because it would then say, we'd have another department saying, oh my gosh, you're giving us more work. We don't want that. So I appreciate, Jen, your willingness to talk about the possibility of meeting with Brendan or someone else to go over that kind of information. Maybe the committee has a role. We can think about that more also. Peg, you had your hand?
Yeah, so I was looking at Norwood and their kind of write-up about what it means, and they have how to apply for a volunteer opportunity. They have a form, fill out part 1, which is the tax work-off application, and part 2 is the confidential financial data. And that does go to human resources because it's confidential financial data. And then application forms are available in HR. HR manages when you get them. It doesn't mean they have to. I'm just saying this is how Norwood does it. They have they get them by a certain date, and they determine if it's an incomplete application, and then they notify them if they've been accepted based on the department head and all that stuff.
Well, it sounds like
that would be the only question I have, is the confidential financial information something that needs to go through an area that is already kind of bound by confidentiality.
And the treasurer's office may be the one that can do that. Jen, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, if we're talking post-COVID, then yes, I can. But this whole COVID thing's got me a little busy lately. So no, I mean, I don't have any problem with, I mean, it kind of makes sense to me to have a small team that's going to look at this versus, here, Brendan, have fun. You know what I mean?
Particularly for a pilot, we can kind of figure it out together.
Right. And so, I mean, I'd say, maybe we pull someone, someone from my office, myself is fine, Brendan, and then HR. But even I was even thinking, as Peg, as you were saying that, HR gets all of that information, maybe we even just have an initial conversation with Emily and say, okay, what, if someone's coming in as a volunteer, what forms do they need to sign? What, maybe we just set up some packets, you know what I mean? And then have them fill them out, give them to HR just to make sure they're all filled out properly. And then that's HR's involvement. You know what I mean? Just for the sake of not overburdening them. Right. I mean, that's just a thought, but.
Yeah, they can cross the T's and dot the I's in terms of process.
Right.
And then the hiring and everything can be all on Brendan.
Well, I know a lot of the websites that I was looking at, the ones that, said the process, like the interview, once the applications were weeded out, the interview was between the person running the program, usually the COA director, and the department head that the job was for.
Absolutely.
So I mean, then too, that would take some of the burden off of Brendan, at least, the applications have been weeded through. These are the skills that people have, these are the ones that fit your department. Who would you like to interview or whatever? I mean, depending on how many people we choose and how many apply and all that, but.
The ultimate decision being the department heads and the person being the supervisor. That's really up to them. And if that didn't work out, then back to the COA director to see if the person fits somewhere else within the various jobs.
Right.
That sounds like a reasonable plan. I see we have, if we stay on our typical time schedule, about 5 minutes. So any thoughts about wrapping up? Jay, you were going to get back to us. Yes.
Yeah, there were two things I wanted to touch base on. One, I know that there's kind of like a divide between city departments and the school. But when we talk about department heads, are we talking about the school as a potential place for the seniors? Because
I was going to include them in the department head presentation.
fantastic,
Why not?
perfect. And the other thing on the PALMS report from the IRS is very, very clear that anyone receiving remuneration under, and their definition of remuneration would be a tax forgiveness, it absolutely is an employee, and you have to withhold Social Security, you have to withhold Medicare. And then the Massachusetts law says, by no means will any of these people ever be considered an employee. So it's basically Pandora's box. So Jen, great idea keeping it under 600. There's no winning, because if the federal government's saying you have to treat them this way, and the state is saying you can't treat them this way, which makes HR, they have got to pull their hair out every time they deal with a program like this.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And yet each time I've talked to any one of the communities, they've never said that anyone was pulling their hair out in HR. Did anyone else hear that? I would agree, Jay, that that's the sense, but I think it gets defined as this is for federal purposes. Okay, W-2, we're going to take out money for Medicare. We're going to take out money for, what was the other thing you mentioned for taking out money?
Unemployment.
So those have to be taken out. So I think it all gets worked out in the details. I really do. I'm pretty confident about that.
Say,
Lips to God's ears.
Jay, I hate to put your feet to the fire, but what was that IRS document that you're quoting from?
It's a PALMS report, and I emailed it to everybody on the thing.
Oh, okay.
Got it.
It's not an HR, it's not a regulation.
It's so basically in 2015, somebody went to the IRS and said, "What the heck am I supposed to do?" And they said, "You have to consider this person an employee because X, Y, Z." Remember, they didn't get Al Capone for being a criminal. They got him for messing with the IRS.
Well, I'm a retired Fed, so I'm used to dealing with federal systems. So, what seems strange to me is some of the things that you guys are doing at the state and local level.
There is a reference number here, Joe. Is that what you're referring? Are you talking about a reference number?
Yeah.
There's one for who is an employee, and it's RS02101.010.
All right. If Jay sent it out, I'll check it out.
It's in there.
Oh my gosh.
I think that I will, now that we're kind of circling back to this, I think that before our next meeting, I will have another conversation with our external auditor about exactly this. Like okay, how do we treat this in terms of Massachusetts versus Fed? What are we required to do? W-2, 1099, $600, 1 penny, you know what I mean? Like maybe if I can get some
Good.
direction on that, versus kind of,
We're circling back, and that's a good thing. That definitely is a good thing to do. Is that still the Scanlon firm?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right. So I'm sure they have experience in communities where this is operating fully.
Yes, they do.
I wonder if I can see if there's some packets, so that at least we'll be prepared. The HR packets that other communities have put together and use in their systems. I looked through my notes. I'll see if I can bring those to the next meeting. I'm thinking of tasks and things that we can do to pull this together. Any thoughts or ideas?
I'm going to work on the documentation. If that's what you're asking, I'll work on that. I will try diligently to get this to everyone next week. I'll do what I
If
can.
there's something you think we should be particularly addressing, I don't know if I didn't look on the shared documents, if they're highlighted, what we need to be thinking about, what you think we need to be thinking about filling in.
Age,
Peg? Yeah, no, I know, but you've highlighted those on the document, all of the.
not yet. No. Some of them I have.
Okay.
But the other question
That'll help
that
us,
just,
I think, to think about this.
yeah, I think right now there's 4, and it's age, the amount, the time frame, like from what month to what month, and are we going to allow other people to volunteer for the senior on behalf of the senior as a proxy? Those are kind of 4 decisions. I kind of think I know where we're going to land, but they're variables that we have to figure out what the document's going to look like.
Mm-hmm. Good. I guess I would also then look to Jen and Brendan, and I don't know if you have any thoughts about particular job descriptions that you think would be appropriate for your departments at this time for inclusion for July or later, whenever we start, whenever the pilot gets off the ground. If we could maybe look at those potential job descriptions, type of people that might be ones that you would think would work out better. I don't know, whatever you think along those lines, I think will help to move us forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely draw something up for my department.
Super.
Yeah, same here.
I think we're making good progress. Anything else?
We on to the 2-week rotation now, or?
I think we should.
Yeah, so where does that put us? It puts us at the end of the month. Let me see if I can pull up my calendar.
We cannot do the 29th, JP, because we've got the fire department thing.
Good thing you've got that squared away. All right. Thursdays have always worked well. The 28th looks like a busy day too
City Council.
for the city council.
How about the 27th?
The
How about the
27th.
27th? It's a Tuesday.
I could see us on the 27th if you think that would be a good idea.
Let me see what my thing looks like. Does that work for everyone else? Do we know? My computer keeps freezing, so.
6 o'clock on the 27th?
That works for me.
Good.
Yeah, I think it works for me too.
Yep, I can do it.
Well, your computer unfroze before mine did.
So why don't we say, if we're good, the 27th at 6 o'clock, and I'll
Yep.
set up a Zoom and get it over to Barbara?
Good. And you'll send me the instructions on how to get the ball rolling?
Already did.
Ah,
Already did. They're in your email.
Excellent. All right.
All right.
Any want to have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any further thoughts or discussion? Thank you. All in favor? Jen?
Yes.
Brendan?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes, on the 27th works.
Excellent. Joe?
Yes.
And Peg?
Hmm.
Don't
Yes.
do this. Don't do this. Thank you so much. We will be able to get word to Stan, who was unable to join us today, about the meeting, I presume. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Looking
you.
Thank you.
To,
Have a good
the
night.
week. See you in 2 weeks.
All right. Take care.
There you
Oh,
go. Won't leave.